Let's get ready to Real Shame. Welcome to Real Shame. It is a twice, sometimes more weekly show where we pull movies from our list of shame or movie blind spots. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
Earlier in the week, no, we didn't. This is Monday. All right, guys, welcome to Monday. We have a couple of classics. We have a classic for you coming soon, but before we jump into that movie, we always like to talk about what we've been watching. So, Andy, what have you been watching?
Alrighty, for no reason whatsoever other than the new Pet Sematary was on some streaming service, Hulu maybe, I don't know, who cares. I wanted to watch the new Pet Sematary. But before I watched the new Pet Sematary, I wanted to rewatch the original Pet Semataries because I don't think I've seen either one of them since they came out. So I rewatched the original Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2. Pet Sematary is a movie, because I'm dating myself and I'm old, I actually saw as a teenager in the theater, like on a Friday night. I was not old enough to go see the movie, but me and my friends, we had a 2-screen cinema, and as long as the other movie wasn't rated R, because I think Pet Sematary is rated R, I believe it is, we would go buy a movie for the one that was PG, and then we would go over to the R-rated movie. We were terrible.
Call the movie theater place.
I know, we were terrible kids, but we snuck in or whatever. We paid, but we went to the wrong movie. We went in and saw Pet Sematary, and there was a lot of high schoolers there, and adults and stuff like that. But I remember having a blast watching Pet Sematary back on the screen in 1989. Everybody was terrified of the little boy. Yeah. You've seen it, right?
Nope.
Maybe. Oh, okay. Maybe you haven't. But
I might have catch parts of it on TV, but I don't think I've actually watched it like all the way through or watched it, on purpose.
Well, it's not good. Like, I had a lot of fun seeing it as a teenager. I didn't have so much fun seeing it now. I just don't think that it holds up, and I think that because it's a little boy basically at the end of the film or the climax of the film that he's died and he gets buried, and so he comes back and he's evil. It just looks ridiculous, and because they can't traumatize the child while they're filming. Yeah. So half the time it's like a doll, and it looks like a doll attacking, the father, or awesome. A little doll hand with like a little scalpel or whatever. Sounds amazing. Well, I mean, it's okay. It's fine to watch for a laugh, but I don't think the movie is as classic as a lot of people tend to remember it. Weirdly enough, Pet Sematary 2 also sucks, but I think it's like a train wreck that you can't look away from. It's a hot mess, but like I actually had more fun watching Pet Sematary 2 than I did watching Pet Sematary 1. It's just weird and crazy, and it's actually the same director, Mary Lambert. But Pet Sematary 2 to me is more watchable than Pet Sematary 1. I feel like most people would not think that. Now the remake, also not very good. They do a few different things with it, which I found mildly interesting. Mm-hmm. The guys that directed the remake are the same guys that did the movie Starry Eyes, which I thought wasn't great, but I thought it was a decent enough kind of horror film. Pet Sematary, the remake, maybe worth a look, but it's not great.
I tried to watch the remake. I got like 10 minutes in, and I was like, I'm not in the mood for this. Yeah. But I do kind of want to watch it. I want to watch the originals too.
I think you should. I mean, just to see, if nothing else, just to see how how they do things differently in the remake than they do in the original.
Been on Kirby's been kind of on a horror movie kick. Yeah. Maybe we'll watch it, but I don't know if we want to watch a movie about animals dying, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's handled in a tasteful manner, I guess. I don't know. I mean, and then I watched Tag, but not the Tag with Jeremy Renner and Hannibal Buress.
Oh, I like that one.
I like that too, but I watched this. I think this is a Japanese film. It was on Prime Video. I literally heard about it on Reddit, and I was like, that sounds interesting, so I watched it. It is bizarre. It's like almost like a David Lynch kind of film about a girl who all her classmates keep getting killed by some unseen force, like just brutally massacred.
So kind of like Battle Royale meets It Follows.
That's what I kind of thought it was going to be, kind of like Battle Royale, which it's really not, but it's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say I loved it because I don't love David Lynch, but it was weird enough. It held my interest, I guess is the best thing to say about it. I watched Mascots, which is the most recent, I think, mockumentary that Christopher Guest has done. It's a Netflix movie. I think it's a Netflix original. Not funny. Probably the weakest mockumentary I've seen that Christopher Guest has done. I watched A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
I wanted to see that.
Fred Rogers.
I want to see that. I haven't seen it.
They film it in an interesting way, but I I actually didn't. Maybe I'm heartless, but I really didn't care about the movie
But
at all.
I heard the rapper wasn't that good around it. Because it was about like a reporter interviewing Fred Rogers, and I hear that stuff's not very
Well, the
strong.
movie's almost more about the reporter and
Yeah.
his kind of his relationship with his father and it being salvaged with the help of Mr. Rogers or whatever. But it just never really took flight for me. And then finally, I know it's a lot of movies. Finally, I watched a very early example of a disaster movie from 1933 called Deluge, where weird unseen force, who knows what, I don't know if it's earthquakes or hurricanes or something, some combination, but at the very beginning, I think the east coast gets completely destroyed and then the west coast gets destroyed and people are trying to rebuild society. It's almost like a futuristic science fiction movie, but it takes place in 1933. It is an example of a pre-code Hollywood film, what that means is there was a motion picture code called the Hays Code that governed what could be in motion pictures and what couldn't. The code was actually instituted, I think, around 1930, but it wasn't enforced until 1934. So everything between 1930 and 1934 is known as pre-code Hollywood. And in those movies, they're so fascinating to watch because they could get away with, and did get away with, a lot of risque kind of behavior.
Interesting.
And dialogue and things that you would not see from 1934 all the way basically up until the 1960s when they kind of just did away with it and they came in with the motion picture rating system instead, the G and or PG and all that stuff. But pre-code Hollywood movies, even if they're not great, I think are really, really fun to watch because, I mean, for example, in Deluge, there's a lady who's basically just in her underwear, and you're not going to see that in a movie that takes place in 1934 onward until whenever. It's just crazy to see kind of what they get away with. And I thought Deluge was actually pretty entertaining for what it was. It's only maybe 70 minutes long.
Interesting.
I thought it was kind of a fun movie. But that's what I watched.
Was it better than Independence Day?
Yeah. Hard to compare the two, but I had a better time watching it.
All right.
Yeah.
So what I've been watching. So I watched Catch Me If You Can, directed by Steven Spielberg, and I think this movie's awesome. Mm-hmm. And, and I was thinking about what we talked about with Empire of the Sun, and Catch Me If You Can just doesn't feel like a Spielberg movie, but it's just so great. I think it's on the best of the movies he's done. Like, it's really high up there. It just really works for me. Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, I think they do a great job. I just really, really, really dig that movie. I watched Fled, it was a remake of Sidney Poitier movie.
Yeah, the Defiant Ones.
Defiant Ones.
Yeah.
And I like Fled. I mean, have you seen Fled? Has it been a while?
I have seen it.
No.
Well, I've seen the Defiant Ones, which is just way better. But
Okay.
but Defiant Ones is not a comedy. Fled is more of a comedy. So they're different in that respect.
I like Fled. It's an action comedy. It just works for me. I think it's really cool. Mm-hmm. I watched Gemini Man. Ang Lee's Gemini Man.
Yeah, which looked terrible to me.
I didn't hate it. It is a.
You didn't hate it, but
no, I thought it was enjoyable. That's
backhanded praise. I didn't hate it.
I didn't hate it because all the critic reviews are bad. I remember them being bad. I thought it was a fun action movie. Like, I thought it was enjoyable, and I didn't ask a whole lot out of it. And I got fun action, and Kirby was just rolling her eyes the whole time. But I'm like, you like The Sixth Day. Like, you like which I think is a worse movie than Gemini Man is. Like, that's the Arnold Schwarzenegger cloning movie.
Did Ang Lee do that?
No, but I don't think he did. But it's just
just because it's got clones.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I was wondering what the comparison was.
So, I mean, I liked it. Kirby rolled her eyes with.
But was it better? Was Gemini Man better than Billy Flynn's long halftime walk or whatever?
It's better than the title of Billy Flynn's 3 hour
I've never seen
long
that. I just thought that
half-mile.
was a weird premise and idea for a movie and title.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 more. We watched Hamilton because that just came out, and that's what everyone is doing. And we were lucky enough to see Hamilton in one of the shows here in the local area, and got to see that on stage live, and seeing it filmed live. It's awesome. It's a great musical. If you like the musical, if you like that, you're gonna like the Disney version of it.
How did the 2 hours and 40 minutes go by?
Went by. We actually broke it up over
Oh.
2 nights at intermission because we started it really late, and I don't do well with movies that start really late. I get really sleepy because I'm old. So we kind of broke it up over those 2 nights. But Kirby could have watched it 3 times in a row. I think she was riveted. And the last movie I watched is a movie that I think everyone's gonna hate on me, but I really, really, really like this movie. So much so that I actually watched it twice. And that's Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. The new Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams.
Now that really
comedy on
says
Netflix.
something because you're over Will Ferrell.
I am. So Kirby. So I watched it like I had insomnia one night, so I watched it like 3 a.m. Because I wanted something to fall asleep to, and I just thought, hey, maybe it'll make me go to sleep. But I was raptured the whole time, and I really enjoyed it. So the next day or the day after, I'm like, all right, we got to watch this Fire Saga. And Kirby's like, really? It looks terrible. And I'm like, yeah, I know it looks terrible, but I really like it. And so but she begrudgingly watched it, and she did not like it. She liked the last 20 minutes of it. And for me, like, I feel like the movie just has a lot of heart, and it has like, it just does. And you can just tell like these people actually care about the Eurovision Song Contest, and it just carries the whole movie for me. And I like the music. We were talking about last week with CB4, and there's a bunch of parody songs, and the parody songs seem to be all spot on from what I know. I haven't actually watched any of the Eurovision Song Contest, so I don't know. But I like it. It has a lot of heart. Not a lot of people feel the same way that I do, but I really like the movie. And maybe I like bad movies because I like Gemini Man too. So maybe I'm just like, there's something going on in my brain and I'm dying and it's corrupted or something.
Well, I haven't watched the Eurovision thing yet. I'm immediately turned off that it's a comedy that's over 2 hours because I don't agree with comedies being nearly that long. Are you listening, Judd Apatow? Your movies are way too friggin' long. And I'm not the only one that thinks that.
And Kirby felt like it was super long, and like I said, I just feel like it wears its heart on its sleeve, and it just feels like a very heartful movie.
I don't think any of my favorite comedies are even close to being 2 hours long because that's too long. Yeah. Like you should have cut some of that out. You should have edited some of that out, as far as I'm concerned.
And I don't think it's like laugh out loud funny to me. It's just I like the music and I like the characters and like it's sweet.
So it's almost more of a musical to you.
Yeah, probably.
So maybe
except for the music's diegetic and they're not singing their heart songs.
I might watch it at some point, but I am immediately, as I say, turned off by its length.
And you probably won't like it, but I like it. All right, so that's what we've been watching. A little bit longer segment, but I like it.
A lot of ground to cover.
All right, so.
All righty. So in 1953, there's a movie that came out called The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando. And in the movie, he plays a motorcycle gang leader kind of person. And he's asked at one point in the movie, "What are you rebelling against?" To which he replies, "What do you got?" I don't know. I can't do a Marlon Brando impersonation.
I think that was pretty good.
But you got to stick like oranges in your mouth or something.
You got to go to the dentist and get the numbing.
Yeah. But 2 years later, 3 teenagers, Jim, Judy, and John, although John likes to go by Plato.
Yep.
They are all rebelling against something in Nicholas Ray's film Rebel Without a Cause, starring a guy you might have heard of named James Dean.
Dad, I have never done anything right. I've been going around with my head in a sling for years. I don't want to drag you into this, but I can't help it. See, I think that you can't just go around proving things and pretending like you're tough.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't, even though you look a certain way, you can't.
That's right. You're absolutely.
You're
absolutely right.
Are you not listening to me?
This is a movie that you have not ever seen.
Never seen a James Dean movie. Never seen this one.
And I saw it on your list. And again, James Dean only starred in 3 movies. We'll talk about what he did other than that later on in this episode. But he only starred in East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. And East of Eden is the only movie that he ever lived to see, because Rebel Without a Cause and Giant were released after he was already passed away. But I wanted to do this film, not for any real particular reason. I mean, not because it's topical or anything like that, but just because I feel like, this is a guy that left behind 3 pretty important cinema, I don't want to say masterpieces necessarily, because I have no idea what you thought about it, but he left behind 3 very important films. And I felt like the time was right to tackle probably I don't want to say most accessible one. Well, for one thing, Giant is like 3 hours long. But I
Is
feel
it a comedy, though?
It's not a comedy. No, it's not a comedy. But no, I felt like Rebel Without a Cause was a good one to start if you're going to dive into the 3 films that James Dean has done. So, without me blathering on anymore before we get into more things, what were your thoughts, or I guess, what did you kind of know about Rebel Without a Cause going into it, and so forth?
I didn't know a lot about Rebel Without a Cause. I did know that, James Dean didn't act in a whole bunch of movies. I think he acted in a bunch of TV stuff, and I knew that he was a, gone too soon, well-beloved kind of actor and stuff like that.
Right.
And I've seen, like, the posters everywhere, the red jackets and the white t-shirt and jeans, you've seen that, and, you've seen that replicated a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a lot of baggage going into this movie. And I thought it was good. I'm not over the moon over the movie. I think there's some flaws in it, and I just think the movie is very peculiar. I think the characters are peculiar. I think the story it's trying to tell is peculiar. It's just very interesting to me, and I think because of the way it is so strange, leaves a lot to interpretation. And this is some of the stuff after we watched it, I was talking to Kirby about that, she discussed in film school and stuff like that. There's different ways the characters act that just seems not normal, and then you can kind of read a lot into kind of their actions. I feel like a lot of people have since the movie come out.
Okay.
Like, one of the big things is that his name begins Zeke, not Zeke. The guy that dies in the car.
Buzz.
There's a lot of talk that he might be homosexual in the movie.
Okay.
I
didn't know that.
That's a conversation that Kirby and her film professor had about that movie.
Okay.
So there's stuff like that. So I just think, like, the movie's a little melodramatic, and I don't know if that's of the time kind of thing, but it felt that way. The you're tearing me apart. I don't know, is it a common phrase from the 1950s? Because didn't we talked about Mickey Rourke and Streetcar, right? Or we talked about we didn't. Didn't he say that in Streetcar Named Desire too? Mickey Rourke. Stella, you're tearing me apart.
Mickey Rourke?
Not Mickey
Marlon
Rourke.
Brando.
Marlon Brando. Sorry. Yeah.
I don't think he says you're tearing me apart, but he might. Whenever I hear somebody say you're tearing me apart, I think of Tommy Wiseau in The Room.
Yeah,
because he says that.
Yeah, and I think he got it from
he did.
Rebel.
He's
right?
a fan. He's a fan.
So I think the characters are really weird, and I like I said, I think it's just a very peculiar film, and I liked it. It's just, for me, it's like, what is the story you're trying to tell? Is what I kind of boils down to. Because to me, it feels like if you're trying to show James Dean's character dealing with killing someone, like, or being a part of killing someone, or being there, I would think you'd want him to kind of live with it more, and you'd kind of focus it around that. But you kind of get his big scene with his parents where he's trying to decide, what's he going to do? Is he going to go to the cops? Or he's not. What does a man do kind of stuff. But then after he goes to the cops and the cops kind of blow him off, that's kind of that's gone, right? Because now he's with Natalie Wood and they're doing their lovey-dovey thing and Plato's hanging around. So it's just like I said, I was trying to get a feel for the tone and what the movie was trying to say. Does that make any sense? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of just like my overall feelings. I liked it, but I don't know if I would mark this down as like masterpiece of cinema and all that kind of stuff. So give me a little bit of your thoughts and how's it play in film history and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't envy you watching this movie for the first time. This, to me, it may be the first example, of a movie that we've seen on this show where, because we haven't done Citizen Kane, but I feel like this is a movie that benefits greatly from kind of reading what scholars think about it and then watching it.
Okay, gotcha.
But of course, I don't want to say, hey, you've never seen this movie, so go read all the stuff about it and have these preconceived notions going into it. I feel like you watch a movie like this and then you read about kind of maybe what was going on at the time or what the director was going on with or what he was trying to say or, whatever, stuff that you may not know. Because, I mean, let's face it, obviously neither you nor I grew up in the 1950s. And, most people that are watching this film today didn't grow up in the 1950s either. So it's kind of hard to know this movie's place in cinema. Watching this movie for the first time, to me, was the same as watching Citizen Kane. I had heard all this stuff about it. I had heard that it was great. It's amazing. James Dean's amazing, yada, yada, yada. And when I saw it, I was like, I don't get it. Like, I don't think I understand. Like you, I got some enjoyment out of it, and I thought this is a decent film, I guess. And James Dean, I thought then, and I think now, I think he's electric on the screen. I think, it is a shame that he passed away so soon and didn't leave behind a very big body of work, because I think he is very good. But I didn't understand it. So just like with Citizen Kane, I kind of had to read about it and kind of like, what are they trying to say? I mean, there were some things about it. Obviously they can't come out and say that the Plato character is homosexual or that he is infatuated with James Dean's character.
And that's interesting that Kirby and her professor had that conversation about Buzz, because as soon as I saw Plato, I knew instantly that he was probably I guess I don't want to in the closet, because I don't think it was, you probably got shunned being homosexual in the 50s. And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely read that a lot into his character.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that it's not. I don't think it's hard to see that. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. They do a pretty good job of making you aware that he's obviously infatuated with.
But he's
James
like a
Dean's
serial killer too.
Okay, well, and that's another thing that I don't remember seeing that, or I don't remember that from the first time I saw this, because I think this is only the second time I've seen it.
Because he killed like a dog.
He killed puppies. Yeah, he shot them. He shot puppies.
Yeah, I wrote John and Plato's going to be the Zodiac killer.
Yeah, it is a little disturbing. So the movie opens with the three characters in a police station. They've all been arrested for something. They're all there for some reason. Jim is there. Jim Stark is James Dean. Jim is there for public drunkenness or just drunkenness, period. Yeah. Natalie Wood's character, Judy, is there because she was out past curfew. I don't know if they explicitly say that.
They kind of draw some very interesting lines with Natalie Wood's character.
They do.
That she's maybe a little... Well, I'll finish and we'll get into that.
Yeah, and then Plato... has obviously got some problems. He's killing puppies by shooting them, and his parents are not around, really. They've basically shunned him, and he's being raised by his housekeeper, who basically kind of views him as a son. She's almost like a surrogate mother for him and cares very deeply for him. Jim's parents are Mr. Magoo, the voice of Mr. Magoo, Jim Backus, and also he was, Thurston Howell III on Gilligan's Island. Yeah. Those are the two main things that I know him for. And apparently James Dean does kind of a Mr. Magoo impersonation in the movie when they're walking around the pool at the mansion that they go to. I thought it sounded more like W.C. Fields, but what I was reading was I think he was supposed to be doing... I think
all that's over
Mr.
my head.
Magoo. Yeah, well, but... So I have 18 gazillion notes here. Probably won't touch on all of them. Nicholas Ray, the guy that did this film, this was his first color film. And this guy... made In a Lonely Place with Humphrey Bogart. He made a movie called They Live by Night, which I really, really like. It's kind of a precursor to Bonnie and Clyde. He did Johnny Guitar, which is a really great subversive kind of Western, Bigger Than Life. All these movies that he did, he is absolutely revered by these French New Wave critics and filmmakers like Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut. Just thought Nicholas Ray was like the bee's knees. But I think... this movie, as you said, it is obviously very melodramatic. Yeah. And I don't think of a movie like Casablanca, which came out in the 1940s, as being very melodramatic, honestly.
Not at all.
But I feel like in the 1950s, you did have a lot of these kind of really melodramatic movies. And I mean, teenagers are melodramatic anyway, right?
Yeah.
But it is a bit over the top, and I just think that's a product of its time. Even the reviewers, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. Roger Ebert and Leonard Maltin both give this movie 4 stars, but both of them also say in the reviews this movie definitely is dated. This movie definitely didn't necessarily, or there are parts of it that didn't really age well.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
No, I was just reading my notes. So yeah, I kind of want to break down so like we said, John/Plato, he's, coded, I think would be an appropriate term as gay, as homosexual.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely has serial killer instincts because you hear about someone killing puppies is definitely going to grow up to be a killer. And when they dispatched him in the end, I wrote, "Good riddance, Plato." He didn't do much for me as a character in this whole movie, but I kind of get it. I see it, but he was not on a good path. Natalie Wood's character is basically a prostitute, or they code her as a prostitute. Because
I didn't see her like that.
When she's at the police station, the police officer's talking about her being like carousing and out in the night. It seemed it seemed to me like they were saying that she was picking up Johns and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know that it's that. I mean, it could be. It is open to interpretation. What I get out of it is she obviously has
and then what's her relationship with her dad?
She acts inappropriately towards her father. There's one point in the movie.
I put, what the fuck?
Where she there's one point in the movie where she kind of forcefully kisses her dad on the lips, and of course he gets mad at her and slaps her or whatever. What I get out of it, and this is also with the help of kind of reading about it, and kind of viewing it this way in hindsight, is that she's not ready for her dad to not be lovey-dovey. She's not a little girl anymore. So she's not ready for her dad to stop being lovey-dovey towards her. So she kind of forces it on him, and she dresses maybe provocatively so that he will notice her, which is why he then winds up calling her a tramp and saying she looks cheap and all this other stuff. She's trying to get her father's attention and, going about it the wrong way, maybe. But that's a very WTF moment in the movie.
I mean, I read it as he probably has sexually abused her. Like
I thought that,
and maybe that's
definitely a possibility.
And maybe that's 50 years, on since this movie came out, close to 50 years.
Yeah,
maybe that's what that is. But yeah, their relationship is not healthy, and to me it seems, and then the fact that she probably, in my mind, is, prostituting or selling herself or however you want to say it. It makes sense in my mind.
I feel like she's still too innocent for that.
It makes sense.
She was totally hooking.
I disagree.
So it makes sense in my mind that her dad could have sexually abused her as a young child, and that's why she kind of.
That I can believe. I don't believe that she's hooking.
Like, not professionally. Like her and her dad got in a fight, and so they caught her like walking around like in the wrong part of town. Like that's.
I think she just left the house because her dad called her a tramp, and she just went out walking.
But we don't see her dad call her a tramp, right? She's at the police station when we first see her.
Right, but she says that. She said, he called me a tramp. He said I was wearing too much lipstick
and then,
or something like that.
What is glamour puss?
Glamour puss.
That's what her dad calls her.
Oh, just an affectionate term?
Is it?
It's an insult.
And then her brother calls her that, which is really, her brother mimes or parrots what her dad says, and I was like, well, or like things that her dad probably said to her. And I was like, well, this is weird.
I think it was like, you're high maintenance, like a diva.
But that
the equivalent of now. Leading
me into there are some interesting terms in this movie that I kind of like. Like he calls someone a real yo-yo. Mm-hmm. You're tearing me apart. And when they're talking about Buzz and Natalie Wood's character, they're a real wheel. They're a wheel.
They're a real wheel.
I don't know what that stuff means.
Well, I love the fact that back in the day, you could just drive straight up, basically to the front door of Griffith Observatory. Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool. Of course, we
saw Rocketeer.
Griffith Observatory. This is the second movie we watch now where people are at Griffith Observatory. What did you think about the switchblade fight, the knife fight that they have outside?
I got a bunch of They Live vibes from that fight. Like it was not. I'm sure in the 1950s it was a thrilling fight, and it's what we imagine like fights now. But to me, like the way it played out was almost like the fight in They Live, where it's really long, really slow, really arduous, and not really thrilling at all.
Well, yeah,
but I do
I'm
like how he tries not to get into the fight immediately.
I'm not sure that the director that is was going for thrills there. I don't
really?
know. Well, I mean, it just seems to be these kids, they don't know what they're doing, right? They're teenagers. They don't know what they're doing with their lives. They're disaffected. They're all kind of upset about something. James Dean seems to be more upset about his parents and especially his dad, who's been emasculated by the mother.
And I just don't get that. And I feel like that is of that time. Like I get it.
I get it. You don't get it. Like
I get it in the context of the movie, but I don't get why anyone would be upset that their dad is emasculated. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Like as a person.
So the inverse of that is like as like women, like if your mother, I mean, it's.
I mean, I
it can be reversed.
I get the idea of it, and I get it in the context of the movie. But for me, having a dad that's emasculated by a mother is just okay. Yeah, one person is might be more forceful in a relationship and parenting and stuff like to me, like I said, and the fact that he wears like a apron like that to me.
Well, that's spelling at home that he's
no.
She wears the pants in the family, and he's doing the
and
cooking or whatever else.
I totally get that in the context of the movie, and I understand it. But to me, it just feels like an antiquated kind of thought, like of way social, the way people act in the household and all that kind of stuff. It just feels antiquated to me. Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know. I don't really view it as being any like sexist in any way. I just feel like it's more James Dean is looking for somebody as kind of a role model. And his father, he don't like his mother because she's too pushy and she wants to jump ship every time something happens and move or whatever. So he's looking for his father to be that kind of role model, but he can't be because he just never stands up for himself and he has no backbone and whatnot. I do like the fact that his parents are always trying to sweep things under the rug. And they're always saying, oh, in 10 years, you're going to feel differently. And, oh, we're going to move away just to get away from things. And they actually encourage him not to go to the police station and report this because they want to keep up appearances. So I like that. I feel like that's timeless. That aspect of the story is timeless because we definitely have rich parents now, and they're not even rich in the movie. They're just kind of middle class, supposedly. But, you definitely have well-to-do kind of parents that they are more concerned about how they look and how their family looks as opposed to doing the right thing.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree. And I just wanted to circle back to the father wearing the apron feels like a sketch out of a Dick Van Dyke show or an I Love Lucy show. Like Lucy accidentally has to go play bongos at the Coca Bongo Club or wherever they does, and then, poor her husband, Ricky, has to stay home and watch the kid, and he's wearing an apron and he's flustered. Like, it just felt very, and you won't see that in a sitcom nowadays.
Yeah.
So to me, it felt like very of the time, and it felt very, slapsticky and very, elevated and arch and all. It just didn't. Like I said, I can understand intellectually it inside the movie. Just me watching it now, 40 some odd years later, it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't make sense.
I think you have to think about for me it's everything in the world at this time was telling you to be a man and do this and women stay home and women do this, and so it's I think just because they were trying to drive that thing home, I think every 1950s advertisement of a vacuum cleaner, the woman wears that frilly apron, and so it's of the visual, even if James Dean had any doubt that his dad was just a pushover, it's this visual, and even the way he cleans the wound, and he's oh, we'll make a list, and he tries to he's just looking for his dad to go kick some ass or something, and he's we'll make a list and we'll think it out. No, let me get the it just seems he's traditional maternal. I mean, it was
And I said, I understand that, and I can see all that in the movie. I can see where it's trying to go with that. It's just for me, it doesn't resonate. Many years later.
Andy, did you think that James Dean was faking being drunk at the beginning, or like hamming it up at all?
This is Kirby's conspiracy theory.
Not conspiracy theory. I kind of thought he was like, oh, maybe, but like, cause he just seemed like there was these highs and peaks of like he would notice something and then, oh yeah, but I'm drunk, I passed out, but then he would like be with it, and I don't know.
I didn't think he was faking it. I did think he sobered up quick. Like, so he could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good point, because once he starts talking to the counselor guy, suddenly he's very coherent and very like intellectual and everything.
His feelings and what's going on in his life.
I thought, gosh, man, that alcohol wore off quick.
Because there's this like one shot like at the very beginning where it's like it looks like he like intentionally decides, oh, I'm gonna lay down. I don't know. There was just like this.
Well, that's something he apparently brought and told the director to film him doing. He's like, watch this, I'm gonna make up something on the spot, and the director filmed it.
Oh, well.
Apparently, from what I understand. So maybe you're seeing his choice. Maybe I don't know.
Cool.
I think it's an interesting read, because I agree with both of you that he is very cognizant and self-aware whenever he's talking to that police detective or that police officer behind closed doors and what's going on with his life and all that kind of stuff.
Did West Side Story come out before or after this?
After.
Okay,
6 years after.
Because the knife fight reminded me of West Side Story, so I didn't know if one had, which obviously is very choreographed and not meant to be taken seriously.
Right.
Which is.
I put it's interesting. Well, it's funny that when Plato goes to his house, he like lifts up the pillow and there's a gun sitting right there.
The violent guy.
And then I put Natalie Wood falls in love really fast. Like when they go to the mansion, she just kind of like. But that can play into your whole. She looking for affection from someone.
Yeah.
She's not getting it from her father, so maybe she's projecting it onto.
And honestly, that sort of thing, when a character says "I love you" after like meeting somebody for 30 seconds in an old movie like that, I don't even really give it a second thought these days, because I've seen it so much. They're just like, "Oh, we just met, but I'm so in love with you," and I'm like, "What?
And
what the hell?"
There's one scene. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
there's one scene I want you to pay attention to next time you watch it.
Okay.
And it's when I forget. You're gonna have to remind me exactly where it is. But it's the way James Dean grabs Natalie Wood's...
After the cliff thing, and he takes her home.
He grabs her scarf in a very unusual manner.
It's like, imagine if it was a necklace, it's like, come here.
He like it's tied around her head, and he kind of pulls it close, and the way he kind of like
I actually remember that. I remember that.
The way he manhandles her is very like what is this... What is this trying to say? Yeah. Exactly.
We came up with this whole backstory as to like why that would have been relevant.
Yeah, like the whole car ride home, he's like, "No, you're not going to tell anyone what happened. You're not going to get us in trouble." And then like him,
you got this right, but but
stitches get stitches.
Yeah, but it was like, oh, this is so terrible. It was so weird.
It was so,
I actually remember that. Yeah, no,
it was so distracting to me. It just like took me out of the movie, because it was like why no one touches people they know that way.
Well, what do you think about the fact that they do this whole chickie run thing? Yeah. My question is, how many times have they done this? How many cars have gone off the cliff and blown up? Because they seem to...
Apparently, James Dean only done it once.
He'd only done it once, but these other guys seem to be old pros at it. It's just like an everyday thing for them. How many burned wreckages of cars are down at the bottom of this cliff? I was thinking about that. And so the one thing about this movie that I just kept saying to myself, or kept thinking while I was watching it, is these kids are fucking terrible people. Yeah. I don't necessarily mean the three principal characters, although shooting puppies is terrible.
Yeah, he's a terrible person in my book.
But like Buzz and these other guys, like they hang the chicken upside down outside the...
Which I'm sure was a real chicken.
That was a real chicken for sure. Yeah. But they're like hanging outside, and they're like kind of yelling at his parents and stuff. I never did that as a teen.
Were you a teenager in 1950?
No, but I'm just saying, like people talk about teenagers are bad now. Watching this movie, I think they were way worse then. Like, they were awful. Like, they had zero respect for authority. They're at Griffith Observatory. They're having their little knife fight. The security guard or whatever he is comes outside, and the guy that did the constellation presentation.
He's like,
yeah, they don't care.
You're right. And those two guys are like, they didn't really want to do anything either. But I wrote down the line that the guy says. he's like, hey, Buzz, should we split? And the guy goes, split for what? A couple of old poop heads?
Classic.
He called them a couple of old poop heads. That's terrible. But no, seriously, poop heads.
Poop heads.
Poop
Oh.
heads, yeah. Yeah.
And the police seem nonplussed that, one of the characters has a gun.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
and I mean, just like,
yeah.
or knives. I mean, yeah, it's.
I'm not going to say anything about that, but.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about current social context with that, so maybe I should leave that there. Yeah, like I said, I just feel like at the end of the day, I thought it was a good movie. I think the story just feels kind of just meandering a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't feel like it's trying to say a specific thing. I think it could probably be argued with what James Dean says to his parents as maybe the theme of the movie and stuff like that, or you gotta man up, you gotta that kind of stuff. But I do feel like it's kind of meandering, and I think in the fact that it's so meandering and that the characters don't act like normal people do, that they act strange, leaves it ripe for interpretation and people writing their thoughts on it and reading into things a little bit more than they probably were meant to at the time, or maybe they would. But that's just kind of like my overall view on this movie.
I mean, I think there is a lot going on in this movie, but I do feel like it helps to kind of read about what other kind of so-called film scholars think about it, and not just one person's interpretation, but a lot of different people's interpretation. And then you can kind of, if you ever do end up watching it again, you can kind of maybe see, oh, I can see why they thought this way. And you may not agree with it. I mean, like, for example, I dug out my old film history textbook, which I have right over here, after I watched this movie. And I was kind of looking, because he devotes a couple of pages, 2 or 3 pages, to Rebel Without a Cause. And one of the things he talks about in the movie, which I never would think of, and I don't know that this is necessarily a fact, but he claims that the colors in the movie all are representative of things. So James Dean's red jacket is stop. Natalie Wood at one point wears a green sweater, which is go. And James Dean's car is black, which is, I don't know, neutral or something. But that's why Plato's colors are red and black, because he's trying to be like James Dean, because he has mismatched socks.
I thought the socks were red and blue.
Well, I think it looks blue in the movie. The scholar or whatever that I was reading claims it's black. But again, it's not like when I was watching this movie, I thought those colors must mean something. I just thought, I thought they looked cool, because I was going to mention this was filmed in Warner Color, which is kind of the successor to Technicolor. And I love all that old kind of looking Technicolor, Warner Color stuff. I feel like the colors really pop on that. Also, this movie was a CinemaScope or whatever, like widescreen. So story and everything was aside, what did you feel about like the visuals and like the...
Yeah, I thought it looked awesome.
Yeah.
Like I liked the time period and stuff. And thought I'm like you. I think there's a little bit of, maybe it's not, the nostalgia is not the right word, because it's not of our lifetime.
Yeah.
But there is something that's heartening and warming seeing like the kind of color palette of those early Technicolor, early Warner Color movies. So I don't know. I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, but there is something like that brings to you when you're watching.
Yeah.
Kind of like I felt with Seahawk in black and white. I just thought it was like gorgeous and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I thought it was. I think it was shot well. My biggest criticism with the way it's shot is maybe, like you said, the switchblade scene was not supposed to be thrilling or anything like that, but that just felt like a balloon just being let go. You know what I mean? Yeah. To me.
Well, I mean, so when this movie came out, it was a hit. It was a hit among teenagers, because they're like, "Hey, finally, we see ourselves represented on screen." I don't know how accurate they felt about it, or if they felt like it was melodramatic, but I mean, it was a success, and ultimately, I think there's just a lot to unpack when it comes to this film. There's a lot of subtext. There's a lot of, maybe this is a theme, maybe this isn't a theme. Maybe I don't know, but again, I feel like it's hard to watch this movie without at least kind of reading what some people think about it and kind of seeing that, because I don't think anybody necessarily watches this film the first time and just everything makes sense or everything kind of clicks. And ultimately, I feel like because of that and because of sort of the dated elements, I mean, I'm like you. I like this film just fine, and I think it's cool. I mean, the 3 films that James Dean did, I like them all. But I like James Dean. I mean, I think he was a good actor in the short amount of time that he was on the earth. But ultimately, this is not a movie I would sit down and watch just casually. I'm gonna throw on Rebel Without a Cause today, or
And
whatever.
it's a little bit long, right?
It's an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, it's not super long, but just a little shy of 2 hours. But yeah, so we didn't discuss kind of the climax or the end of the film. So you got these three characters. They're all wanting something, right? That James Dean is kind of rebelling or upset with his parents, particularly upset with his dad. Natalie Wood is upset with her dad. And I agree with you. They forget Buzz's death really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
They're just like
a
kid. I mean, James Dean has that crisis of conscience where he discusses with his parents, which I think is a standout scene, where he's discussing with him, like, should he go to the police? Should he not go to the police? And he kind of violently attacks his dad. I love that scene. I think it's great. But yeah, they're just like, Buzz who? Like,
well, and Natalie Wood was dating Buzz.
I know. Like,
But
she
she's
must
just
have
like-
not given a damn
like,
about Buzz.
Well, James Dean is right here. Jim Stark's right here.
Well,
What?
there's this, like, because, you mentioned film, like, because we studied this, like, hard. I mean,
I'm sure.
I've, like, dove
I'm
deep
sure.
into this. And so, like, a big theme that, like, because we had to watch it, like, we watch it multiple times, viewing it this way, viewing it this way. I mean, like, it was cool because you just notice everything. And, like, there is a big kind of, like, I don't know if theory or whatever about Buzz might have had attraction to James Dean because in the
I brought this up earlier.
Oh, you did? Well, then never mind.
But say it because
Well, no,
I
he
said it wrong.
didn't go
'Cause it was-
super in depth about
Because,
it. So go
when
ahead.
they're all both on the edge of the cliff, and like I guess before like the race or whatever, it's like James Dean puts a cigarette in his mouth, and like Buzz looks at it, and then he touches
Takes
his lips,
it. Yeah.
and he goes, you're different, you're like me, which like, I mean, I think for the time, you could have seen that kind of idea of like someone kind of putting the feeler out. That would have been consistent with other movies of that time, and so it's just.
I mean, I didn't think about that, but you say that, it gives me a little bit of pause. And he does say, "I like you."
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah,
I do like you, or whatever. And he's like, well, why do we do this? And he's like, oh, you got to do something.
Yeah.
It's just like we're bored.
He's bored.
Let's drive some cars towards a cliff and jump out.
Yeah, and I mean, also too, just you guys touched on this. How insane is Plato's a serial killer? How he just starts off, he's like, well, if you call him Jim, he just start making up this fantasy land, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is a.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When he like when the Natalie Wood's like, how long have you known Jim? And he's like, oh well, his friends call him James, but if you're really close to him, you call him Jamie.
He's just making stuff
he's
up.
just like
if we just we like to sit around and talk about like like different types of plants. You're like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just
infatuated.
So ultimately,
he probably would have killed James Dean if he didn't die in this movie.
I think if he had ran away, if James Dean had said like, because the whole thing is like, hey, guess what, little Plato? Okay, yeah, you've got a gun. Oh well, don't hurt me and your mommy. Like I'm your daddy, she's your mommy. We're gonna go out and like, I mean, it's like, and then it just.
I think he definitely sees that out of them, but I don't know. Well, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So they wind up at this abandoned mansion, which was a real abandoned mansion that was also used in the movie Sunset Boulevard, filmed 5 years before this movie. Yeah, if you've ever seen Sunset Boulevard, the pool in particular is in that film, and it's filled with water in Sunset Boulevard. It's not dry like in this movie, but
they should have skateboarded in it.
They should have. They wind up in this abandoned mansion, and now they're like a family, like you said. I mean, it's the mommy and the daddy and the son, and they found the love that they've always craved with each other. They have this kind of have. I mean, they're happy there. They're happy there for momentarily. And then the outside world comes crashing in. Here comes the cops. Here comes the other gang members, which we didn't mention. Dennis Hopper is one of the very small role as one of the gang
Kirby.
people.
It's weird because it's obviously so early, but he looks the same. I mean, it was like that's Dennis Hopper. I mean, obviously if you know it, but like it almost looked like he was de-aged. It was like his skin was so weird. It was freaky. I mean, I knew he was in it, but just watching it with him, I was like, that's. I mean, half the time he's just looking side to side.
I don't know that he has any lines really. He just is kind of there. He's like,
yeah. I think I remember him saying something, but I could be
wrong.
He goes, "Where's Buzz?" And I think Dennis Hopper.
That's his big line.
He goes, he's down there, or he's off the cliff, or whatever. Like the line of like he's dead.
He's down there dead.
Or something.
He's been exploded.
I saw Jamie, or not Jamie. Oh man, I saw Plato at the mansion, basically just like cramping James Dean style. Like James Dean's obviously trying to see where it's gonna go with Natalie Wood, and then he's just all falling around like tagging on his coattails. And
they're all kind of laying on each other, and they're all one big happy
Yeah.
family. But then the son, Plato, falls asleep.
Early, yeah.
They put the baby to bed,
And
then they go off to do their hanky panky. And then the world comes, and
Yeah.
their sobering reality crashes in, and they all wind up at Griffith Observatory. And Plato's got a gun. Everybody run, and things go.
Plato's
from there.
got a gun.
Right. I was thinking everybody run. The homecoming queen's got a gun.
But yeah, it was interesting at the planetary, and like I said, it was just like I said, I didn't really like the ending because I didn't, like I said, I don't.
Yeah, once I got to the house, he was like, "I don't get it. Why are they at this house?" Like,
Yeah, I just, like I said, I was just trying to understand what the movie was trying to tell me and all that kind of stuff. So it just like I said,
they're trying to play house. I mean, essentially, like
they found their home.
Yeah, because then it's like James Dean can be the dad that he wants to be to Plato.
Right.
Plato has the family, and then Natalie Wood has
Her Johns
/ whatever.
Well, she's got attention now from somebody. She doesn't have to try and force it out of her father in a weird
Was that
way.
not the most awkward scene ever?
It is very awkward. It's actually very shocking for a film that came out in 1955. I was like, wow, what did audiences think of that? Because now in 2020, I was like appalled. What is she doing?
It's so weird.
It's very weird.
But it's framed and set so awkwardly then. You know what I mean? Because she's clearly like a woman of puberty. I mean, like there's it's like
she's too old to be doing that. For sure.
So awkward. I mean, I forgot how awkward it was, and then watching it again with Adam, I was like, ugh, just super weird.
But what do you think about the ending? Do you think the ending's trying to say anything, or do you think it's just wrapping up these loose ends?
I think the ending is trying. I think them at the house and everything's trying to say anything. It's trying to say something. I don't know. Once they get to the observatory, it just kind of ends in like a. I don't know.
Shootout?
What? Yeah, kind of. What I don't like about the very end is that Plato dies right before their feet, and admittedly they didn't really know him that well. They'd only known each other for a couple of days, I guess, at that point. They've been through a lot in a couple of days, right?
I think it felt like 24 hours.
But
it felt like 2 days.
It does almost feel like it takes place in one night, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, he basically dies at their feet. And I don't care, even if somebody's not my friend, if somebody dies right at my feet, I'm gonna be traumatized.
Yeah.
But instead, their reaction is just like, "Hey, mom, dad, meet my girlfriend," whatever. And the parents are just like, "Oh yeah," and then everybody kind of walks away. And then there's a weird guy like in a trench coat that walks as it says the end. There's like a weird guy in a trench coat. They clear that crime scene like that.
Yeah.
Like they take the body. They don't do anything. And there's a guy like kind of walking up like he's about to open up the observatory. He's like the janitor or something.
Maybe
he's kind of looking around or whatever. And I was like, that's all right.
Well, the dad stood up to the mom at the very end.
He did. He gave her a look. He gave her a stern look.
He
does.
She's like, what? He goes like,
nope.
Helen or whatever her name is.
Yeah, he's like, nope.
And
he should have said it in a Mr. Magoo voice.
And like the whole movie is Plato's like caregiver lady.
Oh, she's so sweet. Yeah.
And she just cares so much.
Poor
And
thing.
she like knows all the little kid and I'm just like, oh, that's so dysfunctional.
She's his mom at that point, right?
Yeah.
And she's his mom. Yeah.
But like also like
Plato don't deserve her.
No, he don't.
Yeah, but the whole like with the check, I mean, so like their parents were divorced. It's like they do that like classic film where it's like everything else is blurry, but it's like full care.
You can still care of son, yeah.
I mean, like
really drives it home.
I mean, it's like I'm assuming those are like child support payment.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I got out of it, right?
Just strange to like. I mean, because also, and I think the gun, that's his mother's bed. He sleeps in. He does not sleep in his own bed.
It did look very frilly to me when
that is a fact.
So you think his mom kept a gun under the pillow?
The mom or him, but that is it. He sleeps in his mother's bed.
Do you think that was the gun he used to kill the puppies?
Well, he's got to be more of kind of a mama's boy because his dad, he talks about he'd like James Dean to teach him to hunt and to fish and not get mad at him for messing it up.
Yeah.
So apparently his dad is very stern and is kind of an asshole towards him or whatever.
But we never meet the mom, right?
We never meet either one.
Yeah. So it's like this.
Yeah.
And
is he an unreliable narrator? Because he lies a lot.
Crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy. He lies a lot.
Zodiac killer.
Who knows? He's the Zodiac killer.
The mom's in the basement.
The mom's in the basement. He shot her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
I don't know. Again, a lot to unpack in Rebel Without a Cause. A lot of themes, a lot of subtext.
Make up your own stories.
Make up your own stories, whatever you want to do. But no, I've said this like 50 times during this episode, but I do feel like this, just like Citizen Kane and some of these other movies, there's so much kind of going on underneath the surface. I feel like it does merit kind of analysis via other people's analyses. And then you kind of, conglomerate all that and come up with your own sort of.
And I guess my question on that, and I guess overall is, how much of that's actually, is it all intentional, or is it just stuff that people were thinking and feeling and they just happened to make their way onto the movie? Is it like by projected or by osmosis, I guess? Yeah. Or how much of that's intentional? Like, that's the thing when we talk about analysis that I get the most curious about is, how much of this is intentional versus how much of this is projected or happens. Well,
because we definitely know people watch movies and read way too much into it. I agree. But I don't know that is the case with this movie. Probably with some of it, for sure. Yeah. I don't know about I would never think about that with the colors. I just thought they were colors.
Yeah.
Maybe there is something to that. I don't know.
I definitely think that's with the green and the red.
Green and the red.
Especially
Stop and
go. She's like a loose woman because she or something.
Yeah.
Because I never heard that, and now I'm like.
Kirby's on it.
Andy sold me.
Well, and now we all have to watch the Rush Paul Abdul video, which does the whole Chickie Run and Griffith Observatory thing with Paul Abdul as the Judy character and Keanu Reeves as the James Dean character.
Sold.
Gotta watch the Rush video after you watch Rebel Without a Cause.
All right. Sure. Anything you'd like to wrap up this thing with?
I'm going to end it on a depressing note. All 3 stars of this film died in untimely fashions and died untimely deaths. Natalie Wood died. She lived the longest after this movie. She died in 1981 at the age of 43. She started as a child actress. She's in Miracle on 34th Street. She's the little precocious girl that believes in Santa Claus, right? She's the only one, I think, that believes in Santa Claus in that movie. After Rebel Without a Cause, she would do movies like The Searchers, classic John Ford Western with John Wayne. She's Carol in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, not Monkeys, Ted and Alice.
That movie comes up a lot in our conversations.
We're gonna have to watch it. Like, what the hell? She's in Love with the Proper Stranger with Steve McQueen. Sex and the Single Girl with Tony Curtis. Anyway, while she was making this movie Brainstorm with Christopher Walken, she and her husband at the time, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken were all on board a boat. She somehow found her way into the water and was found drowned, basically, and her death was ruled as a drowning, although all these years it's been somewhat suspicious. I read that they reopened the case a few years ago to kind of look into it further. And I think they questioned Christopher Walken again just to see if there was some kind of foul play involved. Did she have an argument with Robert Wagner? Was she having an affair with Christopher Walken? There's a lot of speculation there. Nevertheless, she passed away in 1981. Her final film was, as I mentioned, Brainstorm, but she had completed just about all of her scenes for that movie, so that movie was eventually released. Sal Mineo had a modest career after Rebel Without a Cause. He did Giant, also with James Dean. He did Exodus. He did Gene Krupa Story. He had a kind of a steady television career. He would appear on different television shows in the 60s and the 70s. He was murdered by a mugger in 1976 at the age of 37. And the guy didn't know who he was. He just was trying to steal money, apparently. But stabbed him in the heart, and he died outside of his apartment. And then, of course, the guy that we all know, James Byron Dean, crashed his 1955 Porsche Spyder while he was driving on U.S. Route 466 in California into a 1954 Tudor on September 30th, 1955. He had completed Rebel Without a Cause, but he never got to see it. It was released about a month after he passed away. The only movie, as I mentioned, way early at the beginning of this episode, it feels like a long time ago, was East of Eden, was the only movie that he actually got to see. He never got to see Giant.
So when did he film his scenes for Giant?
I guess sometime in 1955. I guess it took a little because it was released in 1956. But yeah, he had completed, I believe, everything for that film, and he completed, obviously, Rebel Without a Cause. But he only ever got to see East of Eden. The weird thing is, and I don't know if you heard about this, there's a guy that wants to make a movie now with James Dean as a character, as the main character, using CGI. It's called Finding Jack. I remember hearing about it before. It's like a war movie, but he literally wants James Dean to be the lead actor in the movie and just do it via CGI. Yeah, I don't agree with it. I think that's really weird because I don't like
we
the
talked about
Princess
the
Leia.
sky. We talked about the Sky Captain.
Well, I didn't have as much of a problem with Laurence Olivier in that movie because they mainly use still photos. But like the CGI Princess Leia, the CGI Grand Moff Tarkin, I'm not a fan of that stuff. So they're talking about doing an entire movie with James Dean CGI. Not a fan. And once COVID-19 hit, I think the whole thing got put on hold. And hopefully, once COVID-19 is gone, it will still be put on hold and not ever come to fruition. 96% Rotten Tomato score, 88% audience score, and as I mentioned earlier, 4 stars from Roger Ebert, 4 stars from Leonard Maltin, but they do both mention it is a dated movie, because it is.
Yep.
So...
All right, so that was our review on Rebel Without a Cause, guest starring Kirby.
One small thing, Adam had recently had no clue about this whole Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner thing.
Yeah,
I made like a passing comment like months ago, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" And we dove deep. I pulled up YouTube videos. I was like, we dove, like we became. I mean,
Kirby likes the true crime.
Yeah, and so Adam just passively sat there. And
Nicholas Ray, the director of this, there's a little bit of scandal in his life, but I'm not going to get into it. Maybe it'll come up. Maybe it'll come up in another episode. But I was going to say, moving on to the next episode. When I was thinking about the movie that I wanted to pair with this, really I just wanted to find another kind of 50s movie. Yeah. And I found one, but it's not Rebel Without a Cause. It's from the director of the guy who wrote Rebel Without a Crew, Robert Rodriguez. It is a 1950s movie, but it was made in the 1990s. It's called Road Racers, and we'll do that next time.
All right, guys. So that was our review on Rebel Without a Cause. Yep. That's right. And if you have a question, we answer those on our Wednesday episodes. Shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on social media. We're at realshame on Instagram. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, because that actually does help with getting the podcast out. And we will see you next time when we talk about Robert Rodriguez's Road Racers. See you next time, guys.